The thing that's amazing about Batman is that he's incredibly resilient. He's a character that was introduced in the late 1930s, early 1940s, and a bit of a violent character, even to the point that in the original Batman, he was carrying a gun.
Bill Finger told me and many other people that his influence was the Shadow, Zorro, the pulp detectives, as opposed to Buck Rogers and the various superpowered characters.
He was the superhero who wasn't defined by a particular incredible power, and he was the masked Avenger who was really sort of more than human in some very special way.
What I always liked about the character is he's a self-made man, and he's a guy who has made lemonade out of lemons. This awful thing happened to him when he was 8, 9, or 10 years old, depending on which version you read, and he is allowing that to shape his world.
The core to the character is always true. It's the orphan looking for the revenge of the loss of his parents. It's the one thing that remains consistent in every interpretation. And I think it remains consistent today, and more importantly, it's one of the most important themes of the films that you're seeing right now.
Part of what you want to do in any project with any character that's been around as long as Batman is you want to explore anything that hasn't been done before that creatively can make sense.
Batman Gotham Knight consists of 6 interlocking stories, each from a revered animation director, and will be the next DC Universe animated movie. It's a way to take Batman and investigate a whole new medium in which he really hasn't played in.
We had such a great tradition of Batman in animation, but we never had the opportunity to turn to the great anime directors, do something experimental.
By creating an animated film leading into the big live-action movie is something that enhances the overall experience for the character.
The growing love of the Japanese anime tradition in the last decade really gave us a perfect opportunity for that.
The unique thing about Batman amongst American superheroes and amongst the entire American superhero genre is that he's the one I think is the most easily adaptable to an anime sensibility. The Japanese superhero genre is really radically different than the American superhero genre. Their heroes have a tendency to be more what we would call probably anti-heroes. But Batman, by the nature of the fact that he's a darker character and that he's just a human being, that he doesn't have superpowers of any kind, that's much more in line with what, you know, the typical Japanese anime hero is all about.
In anime, there's a sense of destiny for a lot of the characters, and there is that sense of expression and that sense of emotion.
When you're collaborating across cultural styles, the ideal you start out with is how to tell a story in a way that makes the best use of both of your traditions.
I think that Batman, both in the storytelling and in the anime style, draws from the samurai tradition in the sense that Batman is looking for a master. Batman lost his master when his parents were killed, and his life has been not about vengeance, but about trying to establish right, to protect the innocent, and to actively take down those who are trying to do wrong. And so doing is looking for the master of his emotions, is looking for the master of his destiny, and ultimately realizes that he can be his own master.
In Japanese terms, he's almost the Toshiro Mifune type character, you know, who's always really, you know he's going to, you know, burst into action at the drop of a hat, but, you know, for the most part, he's very, very still and very, very calm, and, you know, always you know, quietly judging the situations.
Looking at the Western tradition of storytelling, you know, Batman really represents and is evocative of a couple of different heroic traditions, whether it's the tradition of the investigator, of the detective, or the tradition of the cowboy, you know, the man with no name, the lone wanderer in a situation, taking it upon himself to save the day. But he is absolutely the Dark Knight. He is the cowboy. He is the one that people turn to when they have no hope.
Walks in, you know, on his horse, and ultimately has to bring law and order to, you know, to the Wild West. A little bit of what's going on if you play Gotham City as the Wild West.
The idea of the vigilante as a positive figure. No one was going to restore law and order if they didn't take it into their own hands.
Every story is essentially about a character solving a problem. And it's much more interesting to watch a character actually solve a problem than to just be stronger than the other guy.
What we tried to do with this project was to really create a storyline that would be flexible enough that it would have those detective elements, the concept of improbable wisdom. That element provides sort of an anchor for Batman's otherwise outrageous intelligence. It makes it seem more realistic because we're culturally adjusted to the idea that a detective can do that. But at the same time, the interactions for the characters were loose enough that it would allow the directors who were going to come to this from the anime side to tell the story in a fashion completely unlike a Western animator would, and to bring to it those emotional dimensions and those visual elements of combat.
One thing that you see in anime and even manga comics is exaggeration. Exaggeration of emotions, exaggerations of facial expressions, stretching what seems the realms of reality of how people will react or even look in regards to extreme situations.
The characters are extremely expressionistic. You think of Edward Munch's Scream with exaggerated features and exaggerated body language.
Looking at manga characters or anime characters reacting to Batman entering a room, one of the things that we like to build is a sense of fear and awe when Batman walks in. Batman fits this stronger than most of our other characters because he can handle the interpretations better than someone else.
One of the things that we really wanted to rely on the Japanese to bring to the project was not just the look of Batman himself, but the look of Gotham City. That's one of the most impressive things about anime is their art direction, the way they create entire worlds that are just, amazing to look at.
Most of his adventures take place at night, which, I think can be fun for artists to play with in terms of what kind of images you're trying to evoke, what kinds of cityscapes, etc. Along with Batman, it's not just about animating the character, but Gotham City itself is a character in his world.
Gotham City's a scary place. Anything that can go wrong has gone wrong and is wandering the streets ready to bite your head off.
Villains have always been interesting to us.
Deadshot's one of the characters that is Batman gone horribly wrong.
I think the character of Deadshot is really exciting. We've reimagined him. The Japanese filmmakers in this case have taken a traditional character model for Deadshot and really reinvented it and played with it. And he really is played as Batman's opposite number in this piece.
He is the playboy, the socialite, with this huge amoral streak that kills for pleasure, kills for money. It's the two great samurais finally squaring off to find out who is the greatest. What's even more interesting about Deadshot versus Batman is one guy who uses guns and one guy who doesn't. In some ways, Scarecrow is the most dangerous villain without having to lay a hand on Batman on who he is, because he can attack him from the inside out, where the other guys might attack him, much more in a physical manner. Batman versus Killer Croc, another ball game.
It's sort of, urban myth versus urban myth. We have the urban myth of Batman, of this vigilante that not everyone sure exists, going after this crocodile in the sewers.
Yeah, poor guy. He's another of Batman's tragic villains. If you look like that, you would be a villain too, or you'd at least have a serious chip on your shoulder.
Croc might beat him on a strength-to-strength basis, but mind and body together is what able to beat Croc.
I think every time you start a project like this, you hope to do something that people will remember and take to their hearts as something different and outstanding. If we do it right, if it's cool enough, then we've got to top it next time. That's the challenge.